Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Oracle EBS HRMS training session. Today, we are going to have a brief about the Training Institute as well as a demo session on Oracle EBS HRMS. About the trainer has more than 17 years of experience in implementing various projects across the globe and across the industries. The trainer has experience in retail, construction, telecom, and so on, as well as he has end-to-end implementation experience in Oracle EBS, HRMS, and many other modules in the geographies such as USA, UK, Middle East, South Africa, India, etc. The trainer is also expert in handling, understanding, and resolving the real-life business challenges in the domain of Oracle HRMS, Oracle Payroll, Oracle Time and Labor, Oracle Self-Service, Oracle Performance Management, and Oracle iRecruitment. Today in the demo, we will cover what are the different types of users which are interacting with Oracle EBS HRMS, what is an ERP, what do we mean by an ERP when we hear a word called ERP, an introduction of various modules within Oracle EBS HRMS and how do they integrate with each other. We will also understand the architecture of Oracle Application eBusiness Suite. On this slide, what we see is modules as well as what are the various topics that we cover in each of these subjects. For example, in introduction of Oracle HRMS, we understand what are the different modules, what is the reporting structure. In Core HR module, we understand how to implement Oracle HRMS, what are the various KFFs and DFFs, and so on. Here we are just giving a glimpses of various topics that we intend to cover under each of the section. However, if you are interested to know more about the training course, you can go to the above link mentioned in blue to understand what are the basic level of courses in Oracle EBS HRMS, as well as what are the advanced level of courses provided by the Training Institute. The additional topic that we will be covering as part of the demo, along with the standard topic, is what are the key terminologies which are used very frequently by the business users, by the client, as well as the Oracle consultant. As part of the training, once you start attending the training on a regular basis, we provide the training material, that is a PPT material, which can be referred by the student on a daily basis. Along with that, we also share the Oracle provided implementation as well as the user guide, which will help you become a consultant and understand how to configure the application based on the business requirement. As part of the training, as and when a good number of topics or subjects are covered, we also provide a project assignment wherein you can configure the application as if you are configuring the application to meet the business requirement or customer requirement. Few of the examples are given here. We understand in HRMS, customer intend to manage many data fields for their employees, such as they want to maintain the passport information, driving license information. So how do you configure the application to meet such kind of business requirement is what is going to be the part of project. For example, if you want to maintain the passport related information for any employee, which includes fields like country of issue, passport number, issue date of passport, expiry date of passport, place of issue of passport, how these fields can be configured in your Oracle EBS HRMS so that the HR manager of your customer site can start entering the data field for their employees. Similarly, you will also be given a project wherein you can create various types of pay component against which a payroll manager can enter a data so that a payroll can be processed by the end of the payroll cycle or by the end of the payroll month. So similar to that, we will be having multiple assignments, multiple projects as part of this training. In order to access the system, there are some prerequisites from a system or from a technology point of view in order to ensure that you configure the application as expected and you get the optimum performance out of the system. Once the training is completed, we also help you to go through the mock interviews which we conduct if you are interested, which will also help you to understand what type of questions are usually asked in corporates, in MNCs, in the space of Oracle EBS HRMS. They will give you a real world experience, understanding how the work happens in various organizations, what type of questions are asked to the candidate. This will clearly give you a lot of indications as well as direction and help you to crack those interviews as well as exams. So now with this, we will move on to today's demo session. Today, we will be covering various types of users. How do they interact with Oracle HRMS? What type of skill sets are needed? That's what we will understand in first topic. We will understand what do you mean by an ERP, what is the architecture of Oracle EPS HRMS, and what are the key terminologies that we as a consultant as well as the customer use while interacting with you, so that it gives you a greater understanding of the system. And at the end of the day, we will have a small fun quiz to understand what is the level of knowledge that you have gained out of the session. Now, I would like to start with this particular slide to give you a better understanding that how you want to plan your career in the space of Oracle application. When you have an application, there are various types of users which are interacting with the application, and those user base cover the customer as well as the implementation team or consultant team. A business user who interacts with the application, he is called business user, customer, client, or end user in some cases. Now, in case of domain knowledge, he needs about 80 to 100% of the domain knowledge. So for example, if there is a recruiter for whom you are working, he should have a very good domain knowledge, how recruitment happens in his organization, how hiring happens in his organization, how onboarding happens in his organization. So this is a hardcore business knowledge that the domain expert or the business user should have it. But he is not expected to be an expert in case of a product knowledge or a technical knowledge. When I say a product knowledge, it is the Oracle EPS product knowledge. So as far as the product knowledge for business user is concerned or an end user is concerned, he should be 20 to 30% comfortable with the application, which is limited to the usage of the application. He doesn't need to know how to configure the application. He doesn't need to know how to write the code. So technical knowledge for him is not needed at all. A product knowledge is in the range of 20 to 30% to know how to navigate through the application, how to use the application. But when it comes to domain knowledge, he should be an expert in his area, in his line. Now, second is the implementation partner or implementation team. In implementation team, you have three types of roles. First is the functional consultant. A functional consultant is the one who interacts with the business user, that is in the first line. He understands the business requirement, he understands the business challenges, and he tries to bridge the gap based on his understanding and his knowledge of the product. So as far as the domain knowledge is concerned, he should be 70 to 80% comfortable with the domain in which he's working. He should be 80 to 90% comfortable and confident about the product knowledge, because that is where his skill is required. He needs to understand the business requirement. He needs to understand the business language being spoken by the end user and try to translate it into the business requirement and solution and configure the application. So as far as product knowledge is concerned for functional consultant is 80 to 90%. He doesn't need to be an expert in the technical knowledge. Okay, but however, he should have a fair understanding how the technology works behind it, what are the basic tables, how data is interacting with various modules within the HRMS space. So as far as the technology or technical knowledge is concerned, he should be aware in the range of 5 to 10% or so. As far as the technical consultant is concerned, who is also one of the key role in the overall implementation team, he doesn't need to be an expert in the domain space. Okay, so as far as he understands how basically recruitment happens, how basically training happens, how basically termination happen in an organization or in Oracle EPS in the range of 5 to 10%, that should be good enough for him. As far as the product knowledge is concerned, he doesn't need to be an expert in configuration space. So 30 to 50% should be good enough, wherein he should know how to do a basic configuration so that his customization work like forms, personalization, workflows, and so on. However, he needs to be, or he is expected to be, a good understanding in the space of technical landscape in the range of 80 to 90% or maybe more, because that is where he is required in the implementation team. His role is to understand the requirement, discuss the requirement, do the brainstorming along with the functional consultant, and translate the business requirement being spoken by the functional consultant into a technical language. Okay, so he understands the requirement from a functional consultant and he writes a code to meet the business requirement. And finally, what we have is a system administrator or application administrator. We also call it as a database administrator or a DBA. The role of a DBA, system administrator or application administrator, is to manage the infrastructure, to manage the server, to manage the environment or instance. He doesn't need to know anything about the domain because he never ever interacts with the business user directly. He even hardly interacts with the functional consultant. He needs to know a technical knowledge in the range of 10 to 20% just to check whether any of the data components are invalid, any of the tables are corrupt, that level of activities that he does. And from a technology point of view also, he doesn't need to know much in 10 to 20%, because his core topic is to, his core expertise is um, to ensure that the environment availability, there are latest patches available, the system downtime is not much. If there are any cloning requirement from production environment to lower environment, that's what is being done by the application administrator or a DBA. So if you see from a hierarchy point of view, a functional consultant is the one who interacts with the business user because he is a bridge between a technical consultant as well as end user. The end user does not know Oracle language. The end user does not know a technical language. So a functional consultant becomes a bridge between a requirement being given by the end user and a technical solution being given by a technical consultant. A technical consultant does not understand a domain language, so he speaks and he talks and he understands with functional consultant and tries to design a technical solution based on his skill set. This particular course that we have will be focusing on the functional aspect of it. If you go through this training, you will be able to become a good functional consultant. You will be able to implement and understand the business requirement and configure the Oracle EBS application in the real world environment. This particular chart will also help you understand the expectation from the customer, and you can also see yourself that in which role you want to be in next 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years down the line, whether you want to be a functional consultant, whether you want to be a technical consultant, or you want to be an expert in domain space. Now let's start with the understanding of an ERP. The ERP term is being used very loosely in many of the organizations without actually understanding the depth of it. Now, ERP is a very simple term, and it is the summation of 3 words. E, that is enterprise, R means resource, and P means planning. If I club all 3 of them together, it will be called an enterprise resource planning or ERP. A very simple definition would be an effective planning of all the resources to help enterprise achieve its goals. See, each of the organization or enterprise, they have their midterm, short-term or long-term goals. Okay, the system which helps you to achieve those goals are called ERP. Okay, now in this enterprise resource planning, the most important word is the resource. Okay, because every organization works around resources, ensures that its resources are managed optimally. Now, what are the resources that you can think of in an organization? In case of supply chain, for example, I have a automobile industry. So what are the resources for an automobile industry? It would be its inventory, what is there in their warehouses, various vendors that they have to work with, the shipping cycle, the billing cycle, the pricing, etc. Okay, so these are the various resources which help a manufacturing industry to work optimally. Okay, along with that, the same company will have a HR department to ensure that their HR processes are worked upon smoothly. What are the resources in the space of human resources? The most important resource that we have is employee. Employee is the most important resource of any organization, of any enterprise or a company. So we need to ensure that the most important resource which is actually giving you a revenue for your organization and helping you achieve your goals is managed optimally, is happy. So anything and everything related to employee falls under human resource. In that, how do you manage it? You ensure that employee related data and the activity is managed effectively and efficiently. You ensure that their onboarding happens smoothly. They don't find any trouble. There is no confusion in the process. They are trained as per your organizational requirement and their aspirations. They are promoted. Their performance management, that means their yearly appraisal happens. And finally, they are getting paid as per their benefits, their pay cycle, and everything. So all these things are various resources, various department in a human resource, wherein your ERP HRMS module help you to streamline the process. And finally, the organization will also have a finance department, wherein they have to ensure that all the finance related activities are working seamlessly, which includes your general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash management, projects, etc. Okay, so these are the various tracks. For each of the tracks, there are applications, and you're based on the line of your business, based on the domain in which you want to work. Oracle gives you a solution which are called as track or modules. Now, coming to our subject, that is Oracle EBS HRMS modules. The Oracle EBS HRMS module has got multiple modules, starting with Oracle Core HRMS, Oracle Core HRMS, wherein the employee data is managed, your hiring of employee, termination of employee, promotion, transfer, mobility, everything and anything related to employee, which an HR manager does in an organization, is being done using the Oracle Core HRMS. Similarly, if you want to process the payroll, you use the module called Oracle Payroll, which is tightly integrated with Oracle HRMS. This module is used to enter and manage the salary of an employee, process the payroll, ensure that the costing happens properly, and finally you make the appropriate entry into the GL, create a bank file so that it can be given to your bank to credit the salary to all your employees. And once everything is done, you ensure that the pay slip is generated for your employees. That is the core use of your Oracle Payroll module. Then you have Oracle Time and Labor. This is also called as an OTL module. This Oracle Time and Labor module is entered wherein you ask your employees to enter a timesheet on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or on a fortnightly basis, which gets into the Oracle HRMS. And finally, on a month-end basis, it gets integrated with your Oracle Payroll so that the salary calculation happens appropriately. You also have a module called Performance Management System. It is used for yearly appraisal or half-yearly appraisal depending upon your organizational needs. And once the appraisal happens, again, it integrates with Oracle Payroll, wherein the HR manager can upload the incremented salary and the payroll can process the incremented salary as and when the appraisal cycle is completed. Finally, you have a compensation workbench where the budgeting is happening. Your unit head decides that what is the budget that he has and how the budget needs to be distributed to his or her subordinate as per the budgeting. If you want to manage the training and you want to ensure that your employees are trained properly, your employees are having easy access to all the trainings and the learnings managed by your organization, you implement Learning Management System or LMS. For the recruitment purpose, if you want to have a recruitment module in your organization wherein a candidate through your corporate website can create his profile, he can also find the jobs in the organization, and then you generate finally the offer letter after the interviews are conducted, you implement iRecruitment module. Once it is done, it feeds the data to Oracle EBS HRMS. And then finally, you have Oracle Advanced Benefit or OAB, wherein you create all the plans. For example, you have a dental plan, you have a health plan, you have many other plans and the eligibility profile based on the seniority of the employees and various other factors in the organization. You implement Oracle Advanced Benefit or OAB. You will see here that all these modules, starting from ESS all the way to OAB, they are tightly integrated with each other. Okay, they talk to each other as and when it is needed. For example, the Oracle HRMS will get the data from Oracle Core HRMS to collect the employee related information. Oracle Time and Labor information, it will talk to Oracle Core HRMS to get the employee related information, allow employee to enter a timesheet, and once it is entered, it will feed the data to Oracle Payroll to process the payroll. And that is the beauty of Oracle EBS HRMS, wherein all the respective modules are tightly integrated through a unified database so that a data integrity is managed and application can talk to each other for the seamless experience. As part of this training, we will be covering Employee Self-Service, Oracle Core HRMS, and Oracle Payroll. and rest of the modules are covered as advanced modules. Now let's look at the Oracle application architecture. As part of the architecture, it is a 3-layer architecture wherein the first is the client, which is being used by a functional consultant or a business user. You have a laptop, you have a mobile application, you have a desktop using the internet browser, be it Mozilla Firefox or Internet Explorer. You access your application. So it is called a client layer, or it is a user interface, which talks to your application logic or application server, wherein you have a web services, you have a form services, you have concurrent services, and you have an admin server. So if you want to access any of the forms, it triggers the form services. If you want to open any of the web pages, it triggers the web services, and so on. And finally, your data for all the applications and all the modules, it resides into a database. And through this application logic, you interact with your database. So user logs in into a client, and through application logic, it fetches the data or feeds the data into the database. Okay, so this is how the 3-layer Oracle application architecture is maintained. Now let's understand some of the key terminologies. Now see, these key terminologies are going to be used by your business users, and whenever I say a business user, it is actually your customer, because remember, the training that we are going through is not going to be for yourself, right? Ultimately, your long-term goal is that you want to work with a customer, you want to work with an organization where they work in Oracle application and you can enhance your skill further. So all these terminologies are very frequently used by Oracle itself, by the business users, by customers, and by your implementation team. So we need to understand what these users are and how they, what these terminologies are and how they are integrated or interact with each other. So the first and the most basic terminology that we will be using very frequently going forward is user. Now, what do you mean by a user? A user is the person who interacts with your application. He can be a business user, he can be a super user, he can be a technical consultant, he can be a functional consultant, he can be a database administrator, or he can be anyone. Okay, so depending upon his profile, he will be having a user ID, he will be having a password. Through his laptop or Internet Explorer, he will be fetching the data or feeding the data into the database. So every user of an application will have a user ID, and he will also have his own unique password. Now, what is responsibility? One of the most important terminology that we will be using and we need to understand is responsibility. A responsibility is something that you are responsible to do in your organization. For example, if you are an HR manager, you are responsible to hire an employee, terminate an employee, apply for leaves on their behalf, do their promotion, do their termination, ensure that their data is managed properly. These are the core responsibility of any HR organization or any organization. Now, in your organization, you can have multiple people playing different types of roles. For example, if you have a learning department within a big umbrella of HRMS, if you have a department for learning, if you have a department for hiring, if you have a department for managing a payroll, and if you have a specific department for managing your promotions, okay, so you can ensure that the users belonging to each of these departments, they are able to do only something which is supposed to be done by them. That means they do not do anything which is not supposed to be done by those users. And that's where your security comes into picture. So you define your responsibility and you group them together in such a way so that every user can see or do something which only he is supposed to do with the help of responsibility. Next is the environment. Environment or instance is something, it is called a system. Okay, any system. If you want to implement anything, if you want to write a code, if you want to configure something, what you need a system, a software. In terms of EBS, it is called sometimes environment or sometimes instance. You have a various types of instance when you actually work in any project. The most important instance or system is the production environment, which is being used by your customers across the globe. Okay, the highest level of security, highest level of data integrity is managed with that environment. That is called a production environment or production instance. Below to that is called a UAT environment or user acceptance testing environment, where your key user do the testing of all the code, and after their testing, it can move on to your production environment. Below to the production environment, you have a SIT environment, that is system integration testing. If you have multiple systems talking to each other, you need to ensure that all the codes are tested properly by the developer, and that's what you do in your SIT environment. And below to that, you have a development environment where you do all your research, all the development, all the code is maintained in that, right? So all type of development, before it is called as a development done or a finished product, it is done by a development team in the development environment. So your hierarchy is, you start with the development environment or instance, move to your SIT environment where you test it with various applications. Once you are confident that your code is working fine, you open it up for your end user in the UAT environment or user acceptance testing. You only move your code and configuration which is relevant to your business requirement in UAT environment, whereas in development environment, you have all types of things. And once your user gives you a sign off that this meets my business requirement and it is okay to be moved to production environment, that's when you finally move that particular piece of code or configuration to the topmost level of environment, that is a production environment. Okay, so this is how you have a different set of environment. Now, what is menu? Menu is a group of various functions which allow you to do a set of activity. If I take a very simple example, when you log in into your Gmail account, what you see on your left hand side is nothing but menu. For example, inbox. You click on inbox, what you see? You see all the emails. But under inbox, you can have multiple subfolders. For example, one of the folder might called as a personal, one of the folder might called as an education, one of the folder within the inbox is called an let's say finance. Okay, so you can create various rules under the inbox, which is the main, and that is called menu. So the topmost grouping of various function is called menu. What is function? Function is the actual a piece which allows you to perform a particular transaction. Okay, so for example, if you want to apply for a leave, you will click on a function called apply leave. When you click on that apply leave, a page opens or a form opens which allows you to enter various data fields like leave type, reason, start date, end date, comments, and so on. Okay, so the action which allows you to perform an action is called a function. What is a concurrent program? Concurrent program is a piece of code which allows you to execute some code. Okay, so for example, if you want to generate a report, you run a program and the output of that program will be a report. If you want to push a data from one table to another table, what you do? You run a program or a concurrent program, it moves your code or maybe a data from one table to another table. So a concurrent program is an indication to your system that you want to do something. That is called a concurrent program. What is a request group? The request group allows you to group multiple concurrent program within a group called request group, so that your users are allowed to do a set of activity which they need to do. So you can have a different responsibilities attached to a different request group, and different request group will have a different set of concurrent program, so that a user from a learning department does not execute a program which belongs to, let's assume, recruitment department. Okay, so this is how you can group various concurrent program within a request group, and you can attach those request group in the responsibility space. What is a workflow? Workflow, as it says, that it shows a flow of a work. So for example, if I am applying for a leave and my policy in my organization says that when you apply for a leave, it should go to your supervisor, and once supervisor approves it, it should go to the HR manager. So the flow of data based on the action is being done using a workflow. What is report? Now, report in real term is nothing but a collection of data shown in a specific format as demanded by the business. Many a times you will see when you will start working in a Oracle HRMS project that business is asking for various data sets from different tables and different screens in Oracle HRMS, because a data is there in the first form, then they need to click on 2-3 places, and then again they want one more data which is there, let's assume, on the fourth form. So to ensure that they don't need to click multiple times and those are very important data fields, many a times they will ask you a report which you can generate from the database by writing a piece of PLSQL code. And finally, we have a form. So a place where user enters the data, a place where user extracts the data is called a form. Now, how do they link with each other? Let's see at the right hand side. So user logs in into the system. Every user will have a set of responsibility depending upon what role he is playing in an organization. If he is a recruiter, he will have a responsibility belonging to a recruiter. If he is a HR of that particular department, he will have a responsibility belonging to the HR activities. If he is a learning manager, he will have a responsibility which will allow him to do only learning administrator related activities. Every responsibility will be linked with a menu as well as request group. A menu is nothing but the set of activities or set of functions. For example, if I'm an HR manager, the HR manager responsibility will have a, let's assume, a menu for the HR manager, wherein the functions that the HR manager is supposed to do is hiring is one of the function, termination is one of the function, transfer is one of the function, mobility is one of the function, promotion is one of the function, right? So all these functions will be created. Those functions through forms will be linked with menu, and finally it will be linked with responsibility, so that user with the HR responsibility can do only those set of activities which he is supposed to do. Similarly, each of the responsibility will be linked with a request group. A request group will allow user to have a group of concurrent program, and concurrent program will allow them to do a certain activities. For example, generating a report, moving the code, performing some activities, for example, running a payroll, etc. Right? So this is how users are linked with responsibilities, and responsibilities are linked with all these functions, concurrent program, and finally they talk to their database layer, that is the Oracle EBS database, and fetch the data based on the security that is linked with the user. So that if I am a HR manager of, let's assume, North America, I only see the data of my employees who belong to North America. If my employees are based out of UK and India, my security does not allow me to see the data of the employees who are in UK as well as in India. Okay, so that is being taken care by the responsibility, which is most important thing. Now let's have a fun quiz. A fun quiz, the purpose of fun quiz is just to understand what understanding have you got in this particular training. Now, what is R in ERP? We understood in the first slide, R means resource. Question number 2. What is the core functionality of Oracle Core HRMS? Now, employee payroll processing? No, because employee payroll processing is part of Oracle Payroll Module. Time card entry? No, it is being done by the Oracle Time and Labor. Employee data management or maintenance? Yes, this is what the HR module does. And the performance management? No, because for that there is a dedicated module called PMS or Performance Management System. So the answer for this particular question is employee data maintenance. The third question that we have is link the parent with the child. So we saw in the previous slide that user is linked with responsibility. Responsibility is linked with menu. Menu is linked with function, and report fetches the data directly from the database. So this is the answer. Okay, so similar to that, we will have multiple sessions as part of this training, wherein we will be covering a set of topics based on the course and curriculum every day, and we will have a fun quiz as and when a topic is completed. We also help you to clear your examination or certification being provided by Oracle. The course will help you to clear the exam or the certification. The certification code is IZ0548. You can go to this URL to understand what are the prerequisites, how to prepare, what is the material to have a better understanding of this particular exam. As part of training that we are going to have, we will help you with some reference material which will help you to clear this certification. We will share the Oracle implementation guide, we will share Oracle user guide, and we will also be sharing the training material as and when a topic is completed. After completing this training, we will be sharing a certificate of achievement. You can showcase saying that you have attended a training wherein your name will be mentioned and it will be provided by the training institute. At the end, we would like to thank you to show the interest in our training institute. We hope that you join us and you gain the knowledge of real world, how the Oracle application can be configured, how you are able to meet the business requirement, functional domain, and many more things. If you have any further question, you want to know more about it, you can write us on this email address, or you can even reach out to us on these phone numbers from India as well as from USA. Thank you very much.